afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we have organized a series of lectures on understanding research processes and practices. We will see how the methods have evolved over the years, and there are several methods, as you all know. We will start from the very beginning, Indologies, to now the cultural aspects. There are various approaches are being followed for the research in social sciences. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in the studio Dr. Amit Sharma. He teaches sociology in Jawaharlal Nehru University, and he also teaches research method and theory. So I hope his knowledge and experience will help us to understand the research method in a new perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Sharma for EduSet lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Today we will discuss research processes and practices in sociology in particular and social sciences in general. At the very outset, I would like to make it clear that there are two types of research processes and practices. One is the traditional research process and practice which was practiced from the very ancient times, both in India as well as in the West. But at the moment, we are not concerned with traditional research process and practices. We are concerned today with modern research and practices which emerged around 18th century in Europe. The first major thinker who established the canons of research in social sciences was Immanuel Kant. He tried to synthesize the two rival research practices. One was called rationalist practices or rationalist method, and second was called the experimental research process or empirical research process. The leader of the first school was a person called René Descartes, and the leader of the second school, that is empirical school or empiricist school, was a person called Mills, John Stuart Mills. Now, by the time Immanuel Kant was writing, he tried to synthesize the two schools by saying that we cannot study reality as it is. We can only study reality as it appears through our theories, concepts, methods, techniques, etc. Now he termed the first reality, that is reality as it is, noumena. He said that noumena cannot be studied by using modern methods. Therefore, we can only study constructed reality, culturally constructed reality, or socially constructed reality, reality as it appears through our theories, concepts, methods, techniques. Together it is called paradigm. Almost every discipline in India is based on the Indological studies conducted by Europeans, particularly by the British. There are different schools of Indology, but Indology is only one of the methods of research in India. The other methods include historical method, which is divided primarily into two branches, the evolutionary method and the diffusionist method. Second is the method which is called a structural functional method. Third is the method which is called Marxist method. Fourth is called a structural method. Fifth is called post-structural method. Sixth is called phenomenological method. Then there is ethno-methodological method, and finally the cultural analysis. These are in addition to the Indological method. It is not possible to cover all the methods in one lecture. It requires a series of lectures on each method. Therefore, today we will try to understand the mother of all research methods in India, that is Indological method. The Indological method in India was established, as I said earlier, in 1784 by Sir William Jones. This is called the British School of Indology. But the British School of Indology is divided into two streams. One, the Indological method of Sir William Jones and his followers. Second is the Orientalist method of Max Muller, who was German by birth, but he was conducting research in India as well as in Asia by the British procedures of doing research in the Orient. He edited the well-known Sacred Books of the East series, which consist of 50 volumes. Now, this is the British School of Indology. There is also a French School of Indology, which is led by Bouglé and René Guénon. The French School of Indology had a different imperative to study India. As you know, the French and the British were fighting each other to control India as a colony. Therefore, it is not unusual that the French Indologists took a different path to study India than the British Indologists. Then there is a third European method of Indology. It is called the German School of Indology, and Count Kaiserling is the leader of this school. Count Kaiserling was some sort of guru of Rabindranath Tagore. He had a lasting influence on Rabindranath Tagore and his followers in Shantiniketan Vishwabharati. Now, the Germans were not competing in India with the British or the French to control Indian territory. As a result, Count Kaiserling and other German Indologists had a different stance at Indian society. They were not trying to justify the British rule in India or the French attempt to rule the South Indian territories. The Germans had no political interest in India. They had primarily academic interest in India. As a result, we find that Count Kaiserling and other German Indologists have produced much more nuanced, much more balanced, much more neutral study of Indian society than either the French or the British. I would like to make it clear at the very outset that the French School of Indology was divided into two major branches, one led by Boole, who was influential in the sense he influenced the second generation of French sociologists and Indologists like Louis Dumont, who became very influential in Indian universities during 1970s. On the other hand, René Guénon followed a different path. He was born as a French Christian, but gradually he was influenced by the Sufi movement of Islam, and he argued with people like Anand Kentish Kumar Swami, the leader of American School of Indology, that all traditions in general have a structural similarity and they are qualitatively different from the modern ethos, from modernity, from modernism. Therefore, René Guénon is considered as a rebel among the European Indologists. He shared the view of Anand Kentish Kumar Swami, who I said was the leader of American School of Indology. It is very interesting that Kumar Swami was neither American by birth nor an American by choice. He just did his work in Boston University. Rather, he worked as a curator in the Boston School of Art, Boston Museum, and he was very influential in developing a particular type of Indology which considers all the traditions, whether it is European or Asian, Islamic, Chinese, Buddhist, Hindu, all taken together, or pagan, as one and the same tradition which is based on the sacred knowledge of the reality. René Guénon and Anand Kentish Kumar Swami are followed by people like Marco Pallis, a British Indologist of late years. He is also followed in India by people like A.K. Saran and many others. At the moment, we will concentrate on the most influential school of Indology, that is the British School of Indology. The British School of Indology was founded at Calcutta, and the name of the school was Asiatic Society of Bengal. This was not only a study of India as India, but this was a study of the East. This was the study of Asia centered around India. In other words, for people like William Jones and his followers, Colebrook, Wilkins, Wilson, and many others, India did not represent only a country, rather it represented a traditional civilization which had a very glorious past. But he said India had a history, very old history, which can be divided into three parts: ancient, medieval, and modern. He said that ancient India was glorious, it was Hindu India, but the medieval India was not glorious, it was some sort of dark age, and the modern is very progressive time. The Indian tradition has got its fulfillment in the modern period. This was very typical of the European school of modernity. The Europeans, moderns, classified time into three parts. ancient, medieval and modern Europe. They said that the age has changed. Yug badal gaya. The age has changed. What has changed? The scale of time has changed. Before modernity, Europeans divided their time into two parts. Before Jesus Christ, that is called BC, before Jesus Christ, that is BC, and after Jesus Christ, that is AD. This was a classification which was made operational in 4th century Rome. In the 4th century, the pagan emperor of Rome converted to Christianity, and he claimed that from today all the Romans have become Christian. The people were not consulted whether they agreed with the decree of the king or not, but it was sufficient for the Roman emperor to claim that since he had changed his religion, all Romans have changed their religion. This was a very interesting claim which can be laughed at in India or many other Asian countries, because unless and until people are converted to a viewpoint, it cannot be said that the whole society has changed. But they claimed in Rome that once the emperor has become Christian, everybody has become Christian. Now it is very interesting that in 4th century the Bible was codified. Unlike Quran, another revealed book of the Semitic people, Bible is not a revealed book in the Islamic sense of the term. The whole Quran was given to the Muslims by Prophet Muhammad as a revealed book. But Bible is not a revealed book. It is not a book which Jesus Christ delivered to the Christians. Rather, the Bible consists of intellectual discourses by the followers of Jesus Christ. Therefore, you have the book of Matthew, Mark, John and Paul and many others. As a result, there are hundreds of Bibles. There is only one Quran, but there are hundreds of Bibles, and different Bibles consist of different books. In some Bibles, there are only 2 chapters, but in other Bibles, there are more than 100 chapters. Therefore, an attempt was made in Rome to construct a textbook of the Bible. All the Bibles available in Rome was called for. As you know, some Bible was not submitted to the court of the Roman emperor. It was maintained, it was preserved by the devout Christians. But so far as the official Bible is concerned, so far as the textbook of the Bible is concerned, it is a Bible which was agreed upon by a group of intellectuals called by the Roman emperor. Therefore, we have a first book, we have an interesting book, the Bible, the New Testament, which is not written by one person, rather which is written by many persons, and its authenticity is decided by a group of scholars. It was some sort of consensus, democratic consensus, which decided which Bible is authentic and which Bible is inauthentic, which Bible is official and which Bible is unofficial. Now, why I am raising this question, this old question? Because the Christianity ruled over Europe from 4th century to 16th century. This was a glorious age according to the Christians. But the moderns of Europe, the modern people of Europe claimed that this was a dark age. They said that before 4th century AD, Europe had a golden period in Egypt, in Greece, in Rome. You know that Egypt is in Africa, not in Europe, but Egypt is a very influential civilization. It influenced not only the Jewish civilization of Israel, in which Jesus Christ was born. Jesus Christ was born as a Jew, but it also influenced the Greeks and the Romans. Therefore, the moderns of Europe said there is a golden age in Europe from ancient times to 4th century AD, and there is a dark age from 4th century AD to 16th century AD. From 16th century AD, the modernity began. It was a period of progress, it was a period of rationality, it was a progress of Renaissance, it was progress of enlightenment. Although Renaissance had started in 13th century, but it is only in 16th century that religious reformation took place. During religious reformation, Europe was divided into two parts, the Catholic and the Protestant. In 18th century, industrial revolution took place, and through industrial revolution, the path of colonization was paved. It is on the foundation of industrial revolution that Europe was able to colonize America, Africa, Asia, including India. In other words, the Europeans had a very strange notion of the medieval, that the medieval is a dark age. This is the age of superstition. This is the age of ignorance. Now, they tried to apply the same yardstick in Indological method. They said that the medieval period in India, the medieval period in Asia was also a dark age. It is very difficult to agree with this view. It is very difficult to agree with this view because this is the period which is considered the golden age in India, the golden age in China, the golden age in Japan, the golden age in Korea, the golden age in Islam. In other words, what is black age? What is dark age? What is the age of superstition? What is the age of ignorance in Europe is not necessarily the dark age for other people. Therefore, the Indological method suffers from a fallacy of equating Europe with Asia and other non-European countries. Nonetheless, there were many educated Indians who agreed with the ideological view. They said that the medieval period in India was also superstitious, it was also a period of superstition, it was also a period of blind faith. This was also some sort of dark age when exploitation took place. They tried to say that ancient glory of India has been restored by the British in India, and the British science technology, the British education is very beneficial for the Indian culture, for the Hindu culture, for the Buddhist culture of ancient India. Now, all the social sciences in India more or less shared this view that the modern India is a very progressive India, and all the modern reforms which the British were taking either on their own or with the support of the educated Indians claimed that these reforms are progressive. These reforms are better. These reforms are desirable and the tradition is undesirable. By tradition they meant the medieval tradition. For example, what is the Hindu tradition today? The Hindu tradition today is not the tradition of Manu Smriti, because Manu was the first man on earth according to the Hindus. He is like the Adam of Muslims and Adam of Christians. In other words, Adam and Manu, they are one and the same people known by three different names. From Manu it became Manusya. From Manu it became Manav. Now the Manu Smriti was revived by the British Indologists as a very important book. They said that the Manu Smriti is like the Hadith of the Muslims, which is not true, because unlike the Hadith, there are many Smritis in India. There are different schools of Hadith, but Hadith is one. In contrast, the Smritis are 16 in number. The last Smriti, Devala Smriti, was written in 16th century. Then independent India had Indian constitution. It can be called Ambedkar Smriti. Now the second book which was revered in India by the Indologist was Bhagavad Gita. Before Bhagavad Gita was picked up by the British, Bhagavad Gita was not read by the Indians as an independent book. The British Indologists said that as Muslims have the Quran and Christians have the Bible, Hindus have the Gita. But it was not true, because Bhagavad Gita is actually part of Mahabharata. Mahabharata is the book. Mahabharata edited by Ved Vyas is the book. And within Mahabharata there is a Shanti Parva, a section called Shanti Parva, and within that section of Shanti Parva there is a chapter called Bhagavad Gita, which is a dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Therefore, logically, the Indologists should have studied Bhagavad Gita as part of Mahabharata, or they should have followed the path of Adi Shankaracharya, who studied Bhagavad Gita with two other books. One was the Brahma Sutra of Vadrayan, second was the 9 major Upanishads, and third was Bhagavad Gita. For Adi Shankaracharya also, Gita was the third step. The first step was Brahma Sutra, the second step was Upanishads, the third step was Bhagavad Gita. But the British took the third step as the first step, and they said that Bhagavad Gita can be equated with Quran or the Bible, and this is the foundational book of the Hindu. This was another major fallacy. The third major fallacy was that they considered only Sanskrit writing as the reliable source to study India. The literal meaning of Indology is science of India. Indology is the science of India, a science which is based on the written records, primarily the sacred books. Some Indologists have also tried to study the epics and the Puranas, which cannot be classified as sacred in the Western sense of the term. They have also studied major Sanskrit poets and dramatists like Kalidas. But as you know, India had also a vast literature in Pali, in Prakrit, in Apabhrans, in Persian, in Tamil. Hindi and other Indian languages emerged around 14th century AD. Therefore, in case they were not trying to study Hindi, Urdu, Bengali, Assamia, Marathi, Gujarati, Rajasthani, Telugu, Tamil or Malayalam, they can be said to have a point. But it was not very logical to ignore the vast literature in Pali, Prakrit, Apabhrans and Tamil. Because Tamil, as you know, is a very ancient language. It is as ancient as Sanskrit. Therefore, there is some bias in Indological method in favor of Sanskrit. Now, Sanskrit is a very scientific language. It is considered the most suitable language for computers. But Sanskrit was not the only language through which India expressed itself. India had many languages from ancient times, and Indologists ignored non-Sanskritic languages. Their second major problem was that they tried to read mythology of India as literary text. Now, myths and mythology or poetry cannot be studied as prose. They have their own language, they have their own code, they have their own symbols, which can be deciphered only when you are an insider. For example, Max Muller has tried to study the Vedas, and he said that Vedas are the sacred books of Hindus. They are religious books of the Hindus. Now, those who know about the Vedas know that Vedas are not religious texts. It is claimed by the Vedic scholars that Vedas teach avidya. What is the English translation of avidya? A literature which deals with creation. There is another term, Vidya, which is reserved for Vedanta, which is reserved for the Upanishads. What is the English rendering of Vedanta or Vidya? The knowledge which liberates from bondage. Therefore, it should be made clear at the very outset that the nature of religious texts in India is very different from the Western point of view than we find in Semitic tradition of Islam, Christianity and Judaism. Vedas are the sacred books, definitely, but they are the books of science. They are the books of theories of energy, that is mantra. Mantra is theory of energy, tantra is technology of energy, yantra is instruments to preserve and promote energy fields among the living beings. The Vedas are full of mantras, tantras and formulas which make yantras. In other words, the Vedas talk about nature, the Vedas talk about creation, the Vedas talk about affluence, the Vedas talk about luxury. They are very worldly books. They cannot be equated with the liberating potential of Brahma Sutra or Upanishads or even the Bhagavad Gita. In other words, the Indologists have tried to claim, in my opinion, without sound basis, without sufficient foundation, that Indians are otherworldly people. Indologists have claimed that Indians are not much concerned with this world. They are concerned with the afterlife. They are concerned with the other world. And they are very impractical people. They are noble soul, but they are very impractical. My question is, had it been true, then there would have been no invaders. Poor people are not invaded. India was a rich country up to 18th century. Rather, India was one of the richest country of the world with China up to 18th century. And from the very beginning, India was attacked by the robbers and luteras for Indian wealth. Had India been otherworldly, had India been a country of only sadhus and sannyasis, then there would have been no war. Because sadhus and sannyasis, the renunciators, do not possess much wealth. They do not possess much luxury. They rather renounce it. But they comprise only a small portion of Indian society. Therefore, the Indological method tried to study India on the basis of literary sources, but their understanding of literary sources was faulty. They should not be blamed for it because Europe did not have the type of literature India had. Traditional and medieval Europe was culturally very inferior in comparison to India. India had such a rich heritage which cannot be understood by the British and other Indologists because they were suffering from superiority complex. They thought that the rulers must have a superior culture and the ruled must have an inferior culture. In India, the situation was reverse. The ruled Indians had a much more sophisticated culture than the rulers from Britain or France. But unfortunately, all the social sciences took the studies of Indologists and Orientalists very seriously. Whether it is history or political science, economics or psychology, geography or sociology or anthropology, the Indological studies, the studies by the Europeans in 17th and 18th century, primarily from 18th and 19th century, became the foundation of traditional knowledge about India. It was criticized by the other people, those who followed other methods like the Marxist method, for example, D.D. Kosambi, A.R. Desai, D.P. Mukherjee, Irfan Habib, Tapad Rai Chaudhary. These are some of the Marxists who follow, these are the people who follow the Marxist method. They have criticized some portions of Indological writing. For example, Romila Thapar has written a book interpreting early India. In that book, she criticizes the Indological method. Then there was a person called Ram Vilas Sharma, who was a professor of English. He was also a Marxist who followed the Marxist method, but he wrote primarily in Hindi. His books also criticize very eloquently, very systematically the Indological method. But the Indological method is still relevant today. Now, the contemporary Indologists have modified some of the views of the early Indologists. For example, there is an Indian school of Indology. Rather, there are Indian schools of Indology. For example, there is an Indian school at Pune. It is known by the name Bhandarkar Institute of Indology. Then there was an Indological center at Baroda. There was an Indological center at Hoshiarpur. There was an Indological center at Mysore. There is an Indological school which is associated with the works of Mahatma Gandhi. It is developed by sociologists like N.K. Bose and J.P.A. Suberai. It is developed by the historians like Dharampal. Then there is also an Indological school which is developed around Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Baba Saheb Ambedkar had written many books about India. It is also based on the Indological writings of the British, because Baba Saheb was not a historian. He was a student of social sciences in Columbia University. He studied economics and sociology, and he relied on Indological writings about the tradition of India, the tradition of Hindu society and the Buddhist society. In the same way, there was a person called Jyotiba Phule who also relied on the Indological and Orientalist writing about India. Then there have been many Indian reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Dayanand Saraswati, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Swami Vivekanand, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. These taller Indians, these great Indians were also influenced by the Indological writings of the Europeans. In the same way, there have been sociologists like Gopal Sadasiv Ghuriye, Radha Kamal Mukherjee, B.K. Sarkar, who have been influenced by the Indological writings. Iravati Karve was also influenced by the Indological writings. K.M. Kapadia was also influenced by the Indological writings. In other words, modern sociology, modern history, modern political science, modern geography relied on the Indological writings and the Orientalist study. Although the Indological writing and Orientalist study suffer from some of the lacunas which was discovered by people following other methods, but it cannot be denied that it provided the foundation to study India from modern perspective. Now, what modern social scientists do? They take Indological studies as data and they try to interpret this data according to their own methods, techniques and theories. It also suffers from their different ideologies. Therefore, take the case of education. Many people have criticized Indian education as elitist or Brahminical, but a historian like Dharampal has criticized this. On the basis of British sources, he has written a book, The Beautiful Tree, or Education System in India in 18th century, on the basis of British sources. When the British had come in 18th century, they had widely reported about the education in India, the science technology in India. And Dharampal had said that Indian education was very inclusive. He had said that the teachers and the students came from different castes. The lower castes were ably included in the education system. Women were also given education. The Dalit caste, the lower castes, also studied in Indian schools, in traditional Indian schools. They also taught in Indian schools. But this is a fact that during the medieval period, Indian education was more around vocations. It was more a basic education than a higher education. Higher education was by and large not conducted in India after the destruction of Nalanda University in late 12th century. There was no major university in India after Nalanda was destroyed. On the other hand, Europe had University of Paris, University of Oxford and Cambridge by 15th century. And these universities conducted modern researches, advanced researches which led to growth of science and technology which led to industrialization, and India lacked in industrialization of Indian variety because of lack of higher education. Therefore, Indological method had both positive and negative points and traits which has influenced the social research processes and practices in India. We will take up these issues later on. At the moment, I will invite questions and queries.
So these were the ideological approaches which any student when they carry a study, they should understand the fallacies and how bias can creep into their research. For that purpose, this historical background is needed. So what others things like important part is the literature review. Any student when take up the research topic, they do the literature review and then they go for the further research practices. So these are the fallacy maybe described or maybe taken into the note at the very beginning, or because it's a very useful sources for any developing the theories of the research. How this will affect the practical data gathering? Because two part, one is this.
Your question has two parts. Uh, in my lecture, I primarily dealt with the British School of Indology. I have not dealt with the French school, the German school, and the American school of Indology in greater detail. There are differences in these schools. For example, René Guénon of French Indology, Count Kesserling of German Indology, and Anand Kentish Kumar Swami of American Indology, they have relied on empirical data. For example, they have studied Indian arts.
Okay, I am sorry to interrupt you. We have a question from EMRC Srinagar, so let us take a question from there and then we will discuss it. Please ask your question.
Indology, what do you mean by that? What is the overall background of that?
Can you repeat your question, please?
What is this Indology all about? Is it studying India in detail and so understanding it in detail, like what is the culture of India and what is India all about? Is like that or is something else?
What is culture of
Pardon?
India? Culture of India. He's talking. We are not listening properly. But what he is asking about the culture of India was different, and what was being portrayed that was different.
Indian culture has been plural, no doubt about it. For example, there is no Hindu religion, there is a Hindu culture. Within Hindu culture, there is Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, Jainism, Buddhism. Then there are Ajivikas, etc. in ancient India. Then within ancient India itself, we have Christianity. Christianity came to Malabar coast in 72 AD. Islam came to India in 7th century AD. The Indologists have studied the Hindu society and culture. They have not given sufficient attention on Indian Islam and Indian Christianity. This is a fallacy. Indian culture is a plural culture, and unless and until we take into account the plurality of Indian culture, then the richness of Indian civilization cannot be understood. Therefore, I plead there should be a mix of the field study techniques and the Indological method both. Without Indological insights, we cannot understand the field data, but only on the basis of field data we cannot understand Indian society. Therefore, both Indological insight and the field observations are needed. Both should be complemented. Only then the richness of Indian civilization can be understood.
What are the other sources of bias that can creep into the research, any research? One is this.
One major bias was that the sacred books of the East was commissioned by the East India Company, and the contract to compile the sacred books of the East was given to Max Muller, not because he was the greatest available scholar of Sanskrit in Europe. Rather, it was given to Max Muller because he was the lowest bidder. Therefore, Max Muller tried to justify the British rule in India. They tried to justify the British rule in India by saying that Indians need the British rule to develop, to progress. Therefore, there was some sort of vested interest in the Indological studies to justify the British rule in India. It was not a partisan study. It was a partisan study so far as the British School of Indology is concerned. The French school or the German school or the American school of Indology was neutral, and therefore that is more inclusive of Indian culture, that is more rewarding even today, that is more relevant even today.
Okay. So these were the Indologist methods. So can we talk about a little bit about the Marxist approach so that we will continue our discussion in the next lecture and students will get ready for that. Just a brief.
The
Otherwise,
Marxist method is a historical method. It is a dialectical method. It is known as dialectical method. The method was developed by Hegel and it was further developed by Karl Marx. In India, we have two types of Marxist method. One which is followed by people like D.D. Kosambi, A.R. Desai, Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib, Tapad Rai Chaudhary, etc. This is called Marxist approach. Then there is a Marxiological approach. It is developed by a person called D.P. Mukherjee. The Marxiological approach.
Sorry, I interrupt you. We have another question from MRC Srinagar. Please ask your question. Yeah, please ask your question.
My question is with regard to Romila Thapar's concept of syndicated Hinduism. I would like you to shed some light on syndicated Hinduism versus the original Hinduism as we have got in Indian history.
He's asking about the Romila Thapa has given a concept syndicated Hinduism. So what is the difference between syndicated Hinduism and the original Hinduism?
I'm sorry, I do not agree with Romila Thapa because syndicated Hinduism is not a historical study by Romila Thapar. Rather, this is the personal view of Romila Thapar as a person. There should be difference. There should be, there are two things. For example, one is a person may be following Marxist method to study Indian society, which he had done in the study of India, History of India, Volume 1, published by the Penguin Books. But the same historian Romila Thapar is also a person, and therefore she may air political views. Her concept of syndicated humanism is a satire, it is a criticism of modern Hinduism, and she is an ancient historian. Therefore, in my opinion, her concept of syndicated Hinduism is problematic as a historical document. This is problematic because she is not competent as a modern historian. She is an ancient historian. She has studied ancient Indian history and she is commenting on syndicated Hinduism of 20th century. Therefore, there is logical and technical lacuna in Romila Thapar's concept of syndicated Hinduism. In case the question is asked about her study of ancient India, I will be more comfortable to answer it professionally. Otherwise, I cannot comment on the personal view of an ancient historian about modern India.
Okay. So we were talking about the biases in research.
There are biases in research, and this example of Romila Thapar also illustrates it. Whether you follow Marxist method or a structural functional method or any other method, there will be limitation, there will be biases, there will be a strength, there will be insights. No method is foolproof, no method is sufficient, but every method contributes to the world of knowledge.
Okay, do we have another question? No, no question we don't have. So there are various methods we will discuss one by one. So well friends, I hope today lecture must be beneficial for you. You will must have got to know how the fallacies come into the thinking, and that also reflect in our any research project. So if you don't take care of all these at the very outset and try to rectify it. So I hope this lecture has given you a historical perspective and will make you help in further study. So with this word, we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and I appreciate EMRC Srinagar for joining us and asking question. And I thank also Dr. Amit Sharma for giving such an insightful lecture on this very topic. Thank you very much.